Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the final night of the virtual fishing series. Tonight we got a heavy night with a couple pros here. I'm sure you guys have seen these, either the two gentlemen, either on TV or on social media platforms. I'll be the host tonight. My name is Ben Fleischacker. I do all the SMU, the private label program with SCHEELS. I'm joined tonight by Matt Schneider. I think I said that right. Matt Schneider from our Fargo store. He's one of our fishing managers, and excited to have him on here.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been a fishing manager for a year. I've worked at SCHEELS for 3 years now, so definitely been around the fishing world for quite a while now. So although I am a bass guy, I live in North Dakota, so I fish a lot of walleye, in the spring and in the late fall. So I will, more than likely, I'll be behind the camera, and I will be answering all your guys' questions for tonight, and then transferring them over for Ben to ask the guys. So.
Very good. Well, thank you, Matt. So tonight, without further ado, we got Jason Mitchell and Johnny Candle. We're going to be talking walleye. Obviously, if there's other questions about other fish species, these guys have done it. They've caught it. They've gone places. We were just talking before the show started here, and the trips they've already been on this year, and also what they got planned out. So it's going to be exciting. We got prize packages this evening. We got 2 gift cards again. We got a $500 gift card and a $1,000 gift card. So please make sure you're getting registered at scheels.com/fishing series. And without further ado, Johnny, if you don't mind, would you introduce yourself and kind of give us a brief background, what got you in the industry, maybe your favorite fish?
Absolutely. My name's Johnny Candle. I currently live in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Been a resident there for about 20 years now. Born and raised in Northeast Ohio, was the son of a Lake Erie charter boat captain. My father ran a large fishing boat on Lake Erie for 30-some years. As part of his livelihood. It wasn't his main source of income, but it was a nice little side hustle, I guess they'd call it nowadays. So I came by this fishing disease, I call it, very honestly. That's what we did for fun. Since I was a little guy, dad, grandpa, mom, even my grandmothers went to the lake or the river and fished with us, and just fell in love with it at an early age, all through high school and college. I thought much more about fishing than my schoolwork, and that was pretty evident when you looked at my report card, that I would rather be fishing than going to school. And when I got out of college, I just said, you know what, it's now or never. I'm either going to make a living in the fishing industry, or I'm going to die trying. And here I am, 51 years old now, and it's the only job I've ever had. So I can't complain. It's been a fun ride.
That's great. Good. Jason?
Yeah, kind of a similar story. I grew up, just loved fishing. That's all I ever thought about, all I ever did. Started guiding at a pretty young age, and guided for quite a few years on Devil's Lake. And then about 12 years ago, we got into outdoor television. We've been doing that ever since. And so, yeah, I've been just obsessed with fishing my whole life. Just love fishing. I love what fishing does for people. And obviously, living in North Dakota, it's growing up, everybody fished for walleyes. That was the only fish. And, as I got older, I also got my eyes open to the fact that there's no bad fish. I love fishing for everything, And so, walleyes are what I've spent the most time doing, but I've never met a fish I didn't like. So.
Very cool. All right, well, let's jump right in. We got the questions coming. We got pages and pages already. So the first one, when is the best time of year to go for walleye, or what's the ideal water temperature?
Anytime you can.
So
I mean, I think, sometimes people get so hung up on chasing reports and all they bit out here yesterday. Well, if there's 30 boats out there today where they bit yesterday, chances are they're not biting there today anyways. I go fishing every chance you can. I mean, you can catch them when the water temperature is 40. I was just out on Skakawea and the water temperature is 38, 39 degrees. It probably was in the mid 40s earlier that week before this big front came through, and we still caught fish. Was that ideal? No. Would have been nice if the weather was better, sure. But, if I could control that, I would be doing something more important with my life. I always joke with people, that, just go when you can. I mean, you look at summer, spring, fall, winter. I mean, there's going to be good windows all through that. I wish it was that simple. May 1st, water temperature is 50 degrees, and that's when they're going to, it's not that simple. Just go when you can. If you have the day off, fish. If you don't have the day off, fish.
I don't disagree. All right, so let's see. For Minnesota, this is a specific question in Minnesota walleye populations. what is your guys' thought on the population, and what are maybe some of the better bodies of water for people to hit?
Well, I think, Ben, right now, and I guess it's a Minnesota specific question, but I'm going to speak even larger than that. I think the fish populations, especially walleye as a whole, are better all across the walleye belt than they've ever been. I fish coast to coast for walleyes, tournament fishing, and have been on some of the best bodies of water in every state. More specifically, Minnesota, Lake of the Woods, Leech Lake. Jason, I know you filmed some shows there recently, the last couple of years. Lake of the Woods, even Mille Lacs Lake, right? Populations are incredible. I have had some of the best fishing I've ever seen the last 3 or 4 years in Minnesota. Obviously, Mille Lacs, interesting with what you can keep and can't keep, but if you just want an incredible walleye experience, catch and release, it's off the chart. Leech Lake, incredible. Red Lake, Minnesota, phenomenal fishery right now. And Lake of the Woods in the Rainy River, I don't know if it's ever been better. I fished some tournaments there the last couple of years where you're throwing back 27, 28-inch fish, almost one after the other, trying to catch that elusive one over 28 inches so you can put it in the live well and weigh it in. And it's really hard to go home mad after a tournament when you handled 25 fish that were 6 pounds or bigger. Who cares how you finish? You had a phenomenal day. So I would say if you fish in Minnesota a lot right now and can't find a place to go fishing, you're just not looking very hard, because all the bodies of water I mentioned, and then throw the Mississippi River in on top of that, and you've got some of the best walleye fishing opportunities in the nation right now in Minnesota.
That's great. Yeah. All right, so Southern state walleye. So let's pick on, based off our store locations. I'm not sure what the walleye population is like in Texas, but let's start at like Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa. Do you guys see a difference with those fish versus the northern fish, like in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota? Do you guys see a difference?
Yeah, I do. I mean, a lot of it's reservoir fishing, like in Kansas, and even Iowa. There's some great fishing on some of these small rivers in Iowa. And that's, some of that stuff's kind of under the radar, but especially look at the reservoirs. A lot of them can be kind of turbid, and then a lot of them are shad driven. And so it's a different type of forage base. And then also some of them, like in Kansas, some of those fisheries, you have wipers and you have some different predator-prey relationships too. And so, it's a lot of, it seems like a lot of channel edges, if you find brush piles, points, things like that, but it's just, a lot of typical reservoir type fishing. And I think it probably surprises people how good of fishing there is in places. Obviously McConaughey is famous in Nebraska, but there's some other lakes or reservoirs specifically in Nebraska and Kansas that nothing to sneeze at. There's some really, really good fishing in some of those places. There's some really nice sauger in some of those reservoirs as well. So
Yep.
I think technically they stock saugeye in some of them actually, because they do better in the turbid reservoirs. So
Yep. Johnson Reservoir, Elwood Reservoir.
Yep.
All right, so this is a good one. What technique did you guys think was nuts, but it actually worked, without giving away your secret?
I don't know. First one that comes to my mind was when we first started fishing jigging wraps in open water, right? I got sucked in that the jigging wraps, or the horizontal gliding jigging baits that we all fished under the ice forever. And then I watch a guy win $80,000, of which a lot of it was mine in a tournament, right? And you're like, wait a second, I better look at this a little bit harder, right? And it taught me a valuable lesson that we can't pigeonhole any technique, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's drop shotting, which is a bass fishing technique, or throwing suspending jerk baits that, again, most people look at as a bass fishing technique, but I've caught hundreds and hundreds of walleyes on both of those techniques. So I would say no matter what the technique, no matter how crazy you think it is, if it imitates a bait fish, then any game fish will eat it. And you got to put walleye right in that category. So yeah, there's lots of crazy things I've seen catch them. And I'm sure Jason has some great guide stories. He loves to tell those guide stories about the craziest way to catch a walleye. I'm sure he could keep us busy all night.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I grew up you look back like in the 80s, for example, at least, out here is, a lot of back trolling, and drift socks. The trolling motors weren't as good then. And it was all, a lot of it was using live bait rigs where you had a Lindy rig, you had the bail open, finger on the line, and be just crawling across structure really slow. And then, and then you obviously using bottom bouncers, but it was a lot of live bait type stuff. And then we didn't have line counters, we didn't have braided line or anything like that. So we did a lot of trolling with cranks, but it was let out the lure until it hit the bottom. It was pounding the bottom too hard, you reeled it up, and we didn't have the contour maps and things like that. And, we didn't know what we didn't know at the time. But I remember for myself, like using jigs and minnows in the spring, whether it was on a river, on a lake or whatever. And then when some of the soft plastics kind of came into the scene and the gulp and stuff like that, and I thought, well, why would a walleye ever hit that when minnows taste better, they smell better, and yeah, obviously if you have that in your head, you'll find examples to prove it, because there's times where live bait works better than an artificial or soft plastic, what have you, but I remember, just getting over that hurdle, say it was, probably 25 years ago now, but I remember that was a one that I probably pushed back and resisted for a long time, probably way too long. I just thought you had to have live bait, and even, I remember as a guide one time running out of leeches and putting gulp on a plain snell behind a bottom bouncer and catching fish like that, thinking, oh my, what has the world come to? That wasn't supposed to happen, but then when you're guiding, you see all kinds of stuff. I learned to keep my mouth shut. Don't have, if somebody pulls something out of their tackle, I always catch them out, in Canada on this thing. Well, we're not in Canada. Keep your mouth shut, because they're going to put it on. They're going to catch fish if you say anything. And what a great learning experience. I can't tell you how many things that I learned from people that didn't listen, that, did something completely off the wall that I would have never done in my boat, almost against my will, like they were resisting me or whatever. And well, talk about a great lesson, so yeah, there's always something to learn with fishing.
Yep. Now, do either one of you guys fish from a kayak, or have you
from a kayak?
Yep.
Do not.
I haven't. No.
You guys got the boats. All right.
There's a lot of places I'd like to, though.
Yeah.
There's some great places I look at all the time thinking, oh, that would be a spot to put a kayak into. Especially, there's some great places for it, no doubt.
Carry your kayak in your boat. All right.
Yeah.
So, best starter walleye tips. I know that's
best starter?
Yep. It's a pretty wide open question on that one, but and actually, how about both of you guys answer, because I mean, you guys, I highly doubt you're going to talk about the exact same thing on this one.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Rod, reel, bait, lures.
Yeah, I would say pick something that that's in your wheelhouse and try to get good at one thing first. Don't try to learn all of walleye fishing right out of the gate. There's a lot of stuff, and I'm sure Jason would agree. I'm still learning, right? I just got back from a tournament in the Detroit River in Michigan, and what I saw out there blew my mind, and I caught fish using jigs and tails that I never thought I'd use in my life. So try not to learn it all at once. I would say probably go out and get a nice middle of the road rod and reel combo. I would suggest a 6.5 or 7 foot spinning rod, probably medium power and a fast action tip. I would spool a nice spinning reel with probably 10-pound braided line. And you've got an outfit that you can jig fish with. You could live bait rig fish with, probably pull a bottom bouncer, cast a crankbait, boy, and then go find a teacher. Don't try to do it all on your own. There's plenty of people out there that enjoy sharing their fishing knowledge. Mm-hmm. I know I'm one. I know Jason is one. And if you can't find us personally, you can find us online, YouTube, Facebook videos, you name it. There's a lot of places to learn from. I watch a lot of people, I don't know if you want to call it stubbornness, but they want to do it all on their own. Spend a couple bucks and hire a fishing guide on your favorite fishing lake, right? Mm-hmm. If it's Devil's Lake or Lake of the Woods or anywhere in between, hire a guide for a day, pay a few dollars, and pay really, really good attention to what you do that day, and then go try to do it on your own. Lots of ways to shorten the learning curve and not get frustrated. But I watch a lot of anglers. They spend a lot of money, but they don't know what on. They waste a lot of effort, and then they get very frustrated because their results are not what they want them to be, and then they quit. Mm-hmm. They just give up. because they don't have success right out of the gate. Well, go find some help, have success early, and then build on your success. And I think you'll enjoy fishing much, much longer that way.
Very good. Jason?
Yeah, I would say, keep it simple. Here's the thing is that if you're in the right place at the right time, you can do a lot of things wrong. Okay, you can have the wrong presentation, you can do this wrong, you have the wrong color, whatever. And so just focus on, being on top of fish and finding fish. And, obviously there's community spots that, that are pretty common knowledge that everybody knows about. Chances are if you go to a bait and tackle shop, for example, in your local area, wherever you live, they're going to be able to point you in the right direction. That's going to be a tremendous resource. And just go out there just for the sole purpose of trying to learn and catch fish, and keep it simple. Don't get hung up on, do I have to use an orange blade or a blue blade, or I got to use a green crank or whatever. Don't worry about that stuff. Just keep it simple, because chances are if there's a lot of fish below you, none of that stuff's going to matter. And if you talk to 10 different people at the end of the day, they're all going to give you 10 different answers. And so keep it simple. And the other thing is don't be afraid to travel to where there's some good fish populations. You're only as good as the water that you're on. I get probably 10 to 15 emails a week from people that, hey, I have a cabin in Bullhead Lake and, in southern Iowa, and I've lived here for 20 years on a cabin on this lake, and I haven't ever caught a walleye over 20 inches. Do you have any tips? I'm like, yeah, you should go down the road to another lake, because if they're there, you would have seen them by now. You can't catch fish that aren't there. And so, talking about Mille Lacs earlier, if I don't know if there's a better lake to learn a lot of different tactics, right? Like you take something as simple as a slip bobber, you could take 2 cinder blocks and tie them together and anchor your boat, and get up on a reef or something and throw a slip bobber, along the edges of some boulders on some of these sunken reefs, and you might catch a smallmouth, you might catch walleyes, whatever, but you're going to catch some fish. And talk about a great opportunity to learn rigging, trolling, slip bobbers, bottom bouncers, 3-way rigging. You could learn it all on Mille Lacs alone, and so that would be my suggestion: is keep it simple. Try to make a trip or 2 to some good water if you don't live near good water, and that'll really escalate the learning curve, because you're gonna have more fish underneath, you're gonna have more chances. So
very good. All right, so what do you guys do, or what's the trigger for you to figure out, hey, it's time to move? I fished this point's not producing, let's go to a ledge, let's go to a flat. What does that cadence look like for you guys?
I don't waste a lot of time on an unproductive spot, especially with modern day technology. You should know if there's a fish near you before you ever start fishing now. I'm a Humminbird guy, but I think it translates across all brands of marine electronics. I see things nowadays that were science fiction movies 20 years ago. There's no reason why you're fishing water that doesn't have a fish in it. And every angler has 2 or 3 confidence presentations, and I'll throw my 2 or 3 confidence baits or presentations at a spot. And if I don't get a result right away, I move to the next spot. It doesn't take long to spend an hour at a spot. Well, you do that 4 or 5 times in a day and you're not very productive. All of a sudden you're looking at your watch saying, wow, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I only planned on fishing till 4, and I don't feel like I've done much. Well, because you probably haven't. So if there's an active fish there, they usually show themselves fairly quickly. And I trust my electronics to tell me if there's fish there before I even put a bait or a lure in the water to start.
Very good. Jason, would you like to echo that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation. Say if I'm on a point, for example, or in lakes, fish a lot different than reservoirs or rivers, for example. Like this time of year, fish are moving so much. You get in the middle of July on, say, like a natural lake, for example, and say you're fishing along the edge of a weed line or whatever it is. I find the fish don't move as much. They'll move, but not nearly as much as what you see like on a river or on a reservoir. And, say if you're in a spot where, say you caught 30 fish the day before and you get there and it's not happening right away, I find that I'm better off slowing down and just letting things happen. These fish might have slid 100 yards. They might be down the shoreline or whatever, but I find that, there's kind of a balance between waiting out fish if there's fish there and then trying to find fish. There's an old saying, don't leave fish to find fish too. And I tell you what, that's the $1 million question. There's times where we all leave fish that we shouldn't have. thinking, oh, it's going to be better somewhere else. And you bounce around 2 or 3 spots. Then you come back to where you started and you catch a few. You're thinking, oh, why did I ever leave here? I knew they were here. But at the same time, where you fish dictates your strategy too. For example, on Devil's Lake, and there's a lot of places where, we don't have the boats that you might have, like say on a Mille Lacs or someplace in Minnesota, where I can leave a spot and I can hit maybe 3, 4 spots quick just to sample some water and see if anybody's home and see if there's any easy fish. And I can slide back to that spot because I know that nobody's been there, okay? Whereas you take a good spot on Mille Lacs and you leave it hit 3 or 4 spots, and then when you leave it, you're looking over and you can see 2 or 3 boats sliding in on it. You're not going to be able to get in there later on, and you're not going to be able to rest that spot. And so I like to rest spots and kind of manage spots that way where, it's just my little theory, and whatever, just something that's in my head. But there's only there's a few fish that move up on a spot. Say it's a point. Say 4 or 5 fish move up in a spot over an hour period. Okay, you can sit there and wait them out and catch them, which is like watching paint dry. Which if you've got people in your boat guiding, they're not going to be that patient. Or you can hit 1 or 2 spots and go back to it and catch the same amount of fish. Okay, but that only works if you can rest it and nobody's fishing it while you're gone. And so that's that kind of dictates part of that strategy as well. So.
Very good. Now, is there a difference in techniques between sauger and walleye?
Sauger are usually deeper and they're in faster water.
Same baits typically?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're fishing, like say, say you're fishing a river channel and it's faster water, you might be using, say, a 1 ounce jig, where the walleyes are up on the seam more and they're, you're using a 1/4 ounce jig. And so you catch them together, obviously, but, catch sauger all the time fishing for walleyes, but if you're just target sauger, usually they're deeper, usually they're more in the channel, even on Sakakawea or Oahe, they're deeper usually.
Very good. All right. So what is your guys' go-to lure for walleye? Hell or high water, you get the opportunity to go out fishing. You've got 2 hours to fish, 20 minutes to fish, whatever it might be. What is that lure tied on?
John? Boy, that's a loaded question because I don't know if there is one lure that does it all. The last couple of years for me, I'm going to have a 1/4 ounce jig and a 3.5 inch white swim bait. I love the SCHEELS Pro swimmers, maybe a Berkeley Ripple Shad, something with a paddle tail on it. The 1/4 ounce jig, I've caught fish in 3 feet of water, and I've caught fish in 30 feet of water if I have the patience to let it sink that far. And that white swim bait, I don't know what it is. The color white seems to be pretty universal, lake to lake, river to river, stream to stream. And again, a lead head jig, you can fish it fast, you can fish it slow, you can cast it, you control it, you can jig it straight up and down. I would have to say if I had to pick one for the rest of my life, that would probably be the one, but I sure hope I never have to pick just one because there's so many different scenarios that, another bait would be better, but that would be my one, I would say.
Yeah, I would say probably a jig too, 1/4 ounce jig with a, pro swimmer is awesome, any type of a paddle tail, even a, twister tail. I mean, they're, that's kind of old school, but you don't hear people talk about it as much anymore. But that's pretty tough to beat. Where if you had to catch fish, say from now until November, that's one thing you could probably catch one because, like Johnny said, you can throw it up into 3 feet of water, you drag it in 25 feet of water. But be tough to beat that. Then the other thing too, from just a simplicity standpoint, especially like I say, if you're fishing the Missouri River reservoirs, Lake of the Woods, Mille Lacs, it's tough to beat a bottom bouncer. Just a bottom bouncer, 3 foot snell, you can put a slow death hook on with a half crawler, you can put a octopus hook with a minnow, whatever. I mean, that's pretty tough to beat too, as far as just, 1 ounce for every 10 feet of water is a rule of thumb. It's pretty bulletproof, simple and easy. And it seems like it always catches fish. So.
Very good. All right. How about some shore fishing tactics for walleye? I know you guys are in boats most times, but I'm sure there's times that you're also beating the bank.
I grew up shore fishing a lot as a kid.
Yeah. Hard to beat a sinker and a hook and a bucket of bait. I mean, that's what I did a lot too. A lot of little streams, rivers, shorelines. I mean, I think Jason and I both, when you're younger and you don't have someone to take you fishing, you got on your bike and you pedaled down to the closest mud hole that might have had a fish in it. And that's how I fished. It was either a bobber with a hook and a split shot or a sinker on the bottom with some kind of snell and a hook and a piece of bait. And boy, it still works today. I watch hundreds and hundreds of walleyes get caught off the shoreline of Devil's Lake every spring, either throwing a bobber out from the shore or some kind of live bait rig sitting on the bottom and letting the bait wiggle around until a fish comes by. It's, what is it? The KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid. And it's effective from the bank for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing with shore fishing, I mean, there's some really good shore fishing too. So don't discount or don't think, oh, I don't have an opportunity to catch nice fish because I don't have a boat, because there's some tremendous fishing opportunities, like especially in the spring and in the fall, like around some of the causeways. It doesn't matter if you're in northeastern South Dakota, even northern Iowa. I mean, there's places all through Minnesota where if you have water moving back and forth between two systems, a little bit of current, those shiners pulling there, especially in the fall. And, if you take like an egg sinker, and I like to put it like a shorter snell, like say a 1.5 snell, and then like a floating jig head. And you can use either a leech or a minnow. And that's one way. You can also throw jigs with soft plastics. I mean, there was times where we throw like floating rappels, number 11s, husky jerks, things like that, and catch. I mean, some of the first big walleyes I ever caught by myself were from shore fishing off of Sakakawea by Snake Creek, where they were letting water out of Lake Audubon in the fall. I would go down there and spend the night down there. I'd cast all night, and caught some really big fish that way. So it's, it brings back a lot of good memories.
Good. All right. Yeah, we've got 6 pages, guys. Let's keep rocking and rolling. All right. With windy conditions, how many positions will walleyes take up on a weed line at one time? So windy conditions and weed lines.
Who wants to go? You want to answer this, Johnny? Or
I'm not a big fan of fishing weeds in the wind. I've seen it work, but I struggle fishing weeds in the wind. Number one, they're hard to see visually because the wind knocks them over. And I have a theory that says fish don't really like those weeds moving around a lot. I'm not so sure that big walleye like to sit in the weeds and feel what they're hiding in moving around them. I could be wrong. I'm basing that just on my personal opinions and my successes, but I seem to have a lot better luck personally fishing weed edges when it's calm out. And I truly believe the biggest factor is because I can see the weeds better when it's not windy. I'm not saying fish don't use them in the wind, because I'm sure they do. But I think a weed edge generally is like any other edge. Points and cups are much better than the straight edges. And that is definitely amplified in the wind, right? The more wind that comes up, I think the more fish move into those ambush points, the tips of points, the cups of the weeds. But again, on a really windy day, I'd probably rather find a wind-blown shoreline, maybe some rocks, something with a mud line. I have a little more confidence fishing those areas in wind than I do weeds. Yeah,
my experience is similar. I mean, I don't like wind that's so strong where the weeds are moving. I don't think walleyes like things touching them, and even flooded timber can be that way. If you get really strong wind where you can see the trees moving, get out of there. Those fish are going to push out. A lot of times they'll actually push them deeper, which doesn't, you'd think that, wind always makes walleyes move shallow, but in weeds, I think it pushes them out. And, but at the same time, it's just a light ripple. A lot of times if it's on a really tough day where it's really flat out and you get a little bit of ripple where you just feel on your neck and you see little puffs going across the lake. I mean, a lot of times I'm running to cabbage because it just takes just the littlest ripple. That's like that cabbage leaf gets that debris stuck to the leaves and it'll cloud the water slightly. Just the littlest, even boat wakes will do that. And so sometimes if it's really flat and clear and calm, you get a little bit of ripple. I'm running to wherever there's weed lines because you'll just see a stain in the water where you can see down, 10 feet, 12 feet, whatever, and you get up in some cabbage and just like a haze where you can't see down. And so that saved my tail a lot of days, so I think it just depends on the veracity of the wind and but as a rule of thumb too, if it's really hard rock and blowing wind, I like a hard bottom.
Very good. All right. Let's see. So with the year, I mean, the last several months here, we've been almost into drought conditions. There's going to be quite a bit of lack of runoff unless we get some great rains coming on here. What do you guys think that's going to do this coming year with the low runoff, or lack of runoff, I should say, even?
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, it's going to vary tremendously from system to system. You get east of the Red River, in those environments, those ecosystems are a lot more static, where mille lacs might go down a foot, it might go up a foot, but it's you don't have the dramatic changes that you have like on, like, say, a Lake Oahe or a Fort Peck or a Sakakawea or even Devil's Lake. It's kind of in this dry cycle where the lake's been dropping from its high. And in my mind, you have that high water. Like I remember Sakakawea a couple of years ago. The water is so high. It was like you see picnic tables in the water. It's just like all kinds of stuff was in the water, and it seemed like a lot of times I would push fish up really shallow, up in the backs of the bays and stuff like that. And even on Devil's Lake with the high water, it seemed like it held more fish shallow. And without that runoff, Devil's Lake's going to fish a lot differently, for example, going down than it did coming up, where it's going to be a lot more, I like boulder fields and boulder piles offshore, really nice, snaggy, complex brush piles that are offshore. I think a lot of those fish pull out into that type of stuff, and you'll see more fish pull out into the basin type structure with cool water or dropping water. But every year is different. I remember when Sakakawea first came up, it came up like 25 feet. And what was weird is that those fish didn't go shallow that first summer. It's like they were still in the same spots, but now instead of being in 15 feet of water, they're in 40 feet of water, and so it's like they didn't react to it the way that, I anticipated, and so, at the end of the day, you got to go out and fish to know, and every year is going to be different. You can say whatever you want right now, but you got to eliminate that, just go through the process of elimination. As a rule of thumb, high water, shallow fish, dropping water, those fish are going to pull out of that shallow water.
Johnny, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think once the spring is over, we probably won't notice as much difference. Obviously, springtime current walleye, they like to head to current, and without runoff, we may see less current in some of our favorite bodies of water. Like Jason said, it doesn't really matter where you're at. We're typically used to rainy season, melting snow, runoff, and current positions fish in places that we expect them to be. So maybe your early spring fishing, you're going to have to look in places that you might not normally look. But I think by summertime, Jason's spot on, right? It's a rule of thumb. When the water's high, you look shallow. When the water's falling or low, you look a little bit further away from the shore, and you're going to stumble into them. But I learned a long, long time ago, and I think probably because I've lived on Devil's Lake for a while, no 2 years are exactly alike ever. And about the time you expect them to be where they were the year before, you're going to get burnt. So you have to wake up every morning, look at the conditions you're faced with, and go make decisions that make sense and try to find fish where you think they would be.
Very good. All right, technical question here. Motor won't go under 2.5 miles an hour. What would a lead core setup allow me to troll a 25 foot of water at that higher speed?
Yeah, you just got to let out more line.
Is there any good resource books out there or YouTube videos or anything you guys would recommend for some of these people? I have struggled my entire life with lead core, but I have heard rumblings that there is a book out there, like an old school lead core book.
Well, the old adage is at 2 miles an hour, you're getting about, with was it 18-pound lead core, which is usually what I use, getting about 8 feet of depth for every color of lead core. And if you speed up, say you speed up to 2.5 miles an hour, 2.3, whatever it is, you might get 5 feet. So you just have to let out more colors. But at the end of the day, just let out lead core until it starts to slap the bottom, and then reel it up until you can just feel the vibration of the lure. If that, you can feel that lead core, if it's slap on the bottom, you just feel that. You got way too much line out, reel it up until you start to feel that lure vibrating again. And if you're using a line counter, just see where you're at. At the end of the day, that's, because sometimes you pull lead core at 2.5, 3 miles an hour. That was an old Ron Seeloff trick that he did for years, letting out a lot of lead and trolling fast, small baits. And so it can definitely work. And if you want to slow down even more, you could always, put something over the side of the boat, even like a drift sock, or I've seen people even use like a 5-gallon bucket just to knock some speed off, and so you can definitely pull lead core. But the other thing is too, is that I think sometimes people live and die by these formulas or these charts too much, because every line counter reel is different. If you don't have it filled up, it's going to be different. It's, so you're going to have to find your own formula, your own system, how you have your rod holders positioned. is going to be different for each person. You know, if you have your rod holders high, for example, you have to let out more lead core than the person has their rod holders low, you know. And so find out your own system. Don't get hung up on the charts. Just let it out until it slaps, reel it up, see where you're at. And say if you start marking fish up higher, reel it up even more until you catch fish, and then see where you're at, and that's your reference point. So.
Very good. All right. At what point do you consider the water too rough to fish? Johnny?
Depends how much you hate them. I've had some tournament directors over the years that don't think the water's ever too rough to fish, but that's a whole nother story. I don't like risking life or limb to catch a walleye. And every person has their own comfort level. I would bet that if Jason and I said, hey, let's take 3 days and go fish together, I don't know if there'd be too much that would keep us off the water. We're pretty seasoned guys. We know what you can and can't do in rough water. We know how to find a place out of the wind to catch a fish. And we've both got countless hours behind the steering wheel or holding on to a tiller handle operating our equipment in rougher water. I grew up on the Great Lakes where a 6 or 7 foot wave wasn't necessarily unmanageable in the right conditions, but Lake Sakakawea with a 45-mile-an-hour wind is a completely different story. So I think there's a lot of variables in there. I would say if you're uncomfortable at all with the conditions, don't go, because you do not want to put yourself in a spot where you're hesitant. It's when you hesitate in those conditions that you're going to get yourself in trouble. And for some people, that might be a 15-mile-an-hour wind. They may not have a large boat. They may not feel comfortable in white caps, and that's fine. Don't go if you're not comfortable. And I would also say don't play Superman either. I've said it to guide clients more than once. They're only fish, right? It's just a fish, and it's really not worth risking your life to catch a fish. But again, every person has different comfort levels, different skill levels, and some guys are great anglers in those conditions, and you can fish in 20, 25-mile-an-hour winds without too much trouble if you do it right.
Yep.
Yeah, I just try to avoid it. I mean, I've been out in plenty of 6-foot waves and whatever, and like when I was guiding, you're probably not going to make any money that day because you're going to break something. You're going to wreck your equipment, and but at the same time, there's a lot of times when the wind's howling and it's really rough conditions, but you just get out of the wind. Maybe it's something where you're fishing on Sakakawea and you run down to the tail race, or you run to a small lake that's sheltered. Or like on Devil's Lake, we have so many little bays and nooks and crannies and stuff where I can't tell you how many times I came back to the fish cleaning, shack where we were cleaning some fish. We're like, oh, I can't believe you went out today. And they only knew how easy we had it. We went 300 yards from the dock and the wind was blowing over our heads. We didn't even hardly know it was blowing. And, I mean, I don't know. I figure there's no sense in busting up your equipment. I've seen kickers come off boats and you name it. And I'd rather find a calm place and fish.
Very good. All right, so the Minnesota Walleye Opener. If you guys were to be fishing this coming up, what would be the lure tied on?
Jig and a shiner in a lot of places in Minnesota.
Big shiner, little shiner?
Yeah, let the fish tell you.
Yeah, I would agree. Jigs and shiners, slip bobber and a leech, hard to beat on a nice shallow rock pile somewhere, Minnesota Opener. If you're really gung-ho and you want to be that guy that casts your line out right when the clock strikes midnight, you're going to want a lighted bobber and a bucket of leeches someplace. That works great. I kind of miss openers. North Dakota doesn't have a close season where I live, but man, I fished a lot of Minnesota openers. I think, Jason, you have too, the Governor's Opener several times with different sponsors. And man, even though it's not my opener, there's just something about an opening day that gets me fired up. And I don't even really care what lure I have on. It's just kind of cool to see everybody get excited to go fishing on opening day. It's almost like Christmas when you go to Minnesota for opening day.
It's a big deal.
It's absolutely incredible to see everybody get that fired up to finally put their line in the water to try to catch a walleye. And I kind of miss that a little bit. I wish I was going to be involved this year with the Minnesota opener. It's a lot of fun.
Jason?
Yeah, I would say a jig and a shiner in a lot of places, especially northern Minnesota. You get from, say, Brainerd north, a lot of that water, a jig and a shiner. Last summer the shiners are hard to come by, so there's times we use rainbows or fatheads too, but a jig and a minnow is pretty tough to beat, whether Mille Lacs, Leech Lake, Vermilion, Capicona, or Cabotogama. I mean, it's pretty tough to beat a jig and a minnow.
Very good. All right, so what kind of electronics do you guys have on your boats right now?
What kind of what?
Electronics.
Okay, I run Lowrances, HDSs.
Yeah, and I've got Humminbird Helix units in my boat.
Very good. What's the favorite part of those? Obviously, since there are two of them, I mean, we got enough customers out there that are probably could be, is it Lowrance? Is it Humminbird? What do I go with?
I mean, for me, I like the Lowrance for finding fish, for marking fish. I feel really confident in what I'm seeing. I feel really confident gauging the size of the fish, and I like the speed of the orientation of the boat positioning on the plotter or the chart, on the map itself. And so, for boat control and stuff, I think that's one of the things I like about Lowrance. But I can tell you, I mean, I think all of them are making a really good unit right now. It doesn't matter if it's Lowrance, Garmin, Humminbird. They're all pretty legit at this point. So it comes down to just personal preference of what you're used to using with the menus and things like that. But yeah, for the speed of the GPS and really identifying fish, I love those HDS carbon units.
Yeah, for me, it's the one boat network, Johnson Outdoors. So you got Humminbird, Minn Kota. You put it all together, it integrates so well. And I can literally drive my trolling motor. I can deploy my trolling motor if I'm using the Minn Kota Altera. I can put my Minn Kota Talon in and out, and I can do it from any head unit in the boat. I can do it from any remote in the boat. I can save waypoints with my trolling motor handheld remote. I can steer my trolling motor from my Humminbird depth finder. No matter where I'm at in the boat, I can reach a button to operate every piece of equipment that's connected to each other. And I think Johnson Outdoors has done an incredible job with trolling motors that drive themselves, spot lock, follow contours, autopilots, cruise controls, all that. And just having it all networked together just makes the ease of operation absolutely incredible. We're all great anglers when we don't have to drive a boat. And Humminbird and Minn Kota have come out with ways that you don't have to drive your boat if you don't want to. It'll drive itself.
Very nice.
Pretty incredible.
All right, so let's talk about live bait. There's a lot of live bait questions here. We have already talked about pretty much everything at this point, but is there certain times of the year that you find that leeches work better versus shiners or minnows versus crawlers, or even just a straight plastic at that point?
I use plastics whenever I can, just for the convenience of it. I'm kind of a plastics first, live bait second, if I can. But I think there's kind of an age-old assumption, if you will, that you start out with minnows early, then night crawlers and leeches. It's progression. But what I find, like on Devil's Lake, is that I like to use leeches as soon as I can get them. Another couple of weeks, I'll be using leeches on Devil's Lake. And some of it is that we have a lot of white bass and pike in the lake that you seem to catch more of if you're using minnows, or if you use leeches. You'll still catch an occasional white bass, you'll still catch pike, but it just seems like it keeps some of those other species away. But even in Minnesota, Mille Lacs and stuff, I'll use leeches on slip uppers right away. And people say, they curl up when it's cold or whatever, but hook them in the middle on a single hook, and they'll swim in cold water. And so I mean, and some of it I think might be psychological. Again, if you're in the right place, you can use the wrong bait.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's times early in the year where we've caught fish on crawlers and whatever. And so I don't know if fish probably worry about it as much as we do at times. It's just a deal where, midsummer, you see more of that traditional crawler bite, and you see the leeches all summer. But I think you talk to 10 different people, you get 10 different answers. So.
Very good. All right. So the dog days of summer, where are you guys searching for walleye?
Well, first of all, I don't believe in the dog days of summer. Metabolism may slow down a little bit for walleyes, but I've proven it to myself and had other people prove it to me that I try to use the dog days of an excuse for not catching, and I go to the fish cleaning station or I go to the tournament weigh scale and there's a bigger basket than mine, or a dad and a grandpa and his son cleaning a limit of walleye when I blamed it all on the dog days and couldn't catch them. So I've kind of tried to throw that out of my head and don't let August and early September get me down just because the calendar says it's the dog days of summer. That being said, it does seem like you have to make some adjustments. I think the reason that August and September get so hard to catch fish is because there's such an abundance of food in just about every system we can name that time of year. Everything that hatched in the spring by August is big enough for a walleye to consider it a meal, right? So early in the spring, it's all really big bait and not a whole lot of it. And everything hatches and it grows and grows and grows. And all of a sudden, by the middle of August, all these young of the year perch, young of the year white bass, young of the year bluegills and crappies, depending on where you're at, are now a meal. And there's so much of it that it's really hard for us to convince a walleye to eat something that's not real. So it gets challenging that way. As far as locations, yeah, water temperature can dictate that. A lot of times you might have to go a little deeper, maybe further into the weeds. I love fishing shallow weeds in the dog days of summer. I know a lot of people say, wow, why would you go in 7 or 8 feet of water? But if you've ever swam in a natural lake and walked or waded through a weed bed and feel the water temperature drop when you get inside a bed of cabbage or broad-leafed weeds, you will understand why walleye stay in 8 feet of water in a weed bed in the middle of summer. So I might look a little deeper. I might look into the weeds cover for shade. But the biggest thing is changing your presentations to mimic what they want to eat. And that usually means going with smaller lures than what you really think you need to. And I know Jason does that a lot. I think you did a TV show, Jason, last year or the year before, trolling small Salmon hornets in shallow water in the middle of August, right? I know that's one of the things you love to do. And you got to give them the baits, the size of bait that they want. And it may not be what you're comfortable fishing with.
Yeah, I find I do better fishing faster. And I remember just, being young where, like when I was say like 20, 22 years old, and you start out early in the year and you're fishing your traditional spots and you're having some success, then it gets tough, right? And then, the fish move, things change, and then, just kind of struggling, and that led to the dog days of summer. And it just seemed like, and I was, at that back then, I like to use a Lindy rig, right? You like to use a jig, and it was all about using the lightest line you could, the smallest hooks you could, bait, and that was kind of the mentality at the time. And then, I don't know how and where and why exactly, but, I finally discovered that, wow, I can run this 2-ounce bottom bouncer way faster than I ever imagined. And I'm getting the hardest strikes I've ever seen from a walleye, and so that's probably the biggest adjustment I think that people sometimes it can be challenges. You learn to fish a certain way, which, like especially like with finesse and live bait, jigs using the lightest line, 6-pound test or whatever. And then, convincing yourself to run, let's say 2 miles an hour with a lead bottom bouncer, it's like a big piece of clothes hanger and a 3-foot snell that's 20-pound test and a spinner on it. And then on top of it, you replace the crawler with a piece of gulp, and you're just like, that can be a hard adjustment. I know it was for me when I was young. And as soon as I discovered that, or though I got a taste of it and got confidence in it, then it was like, whoa, and so I find that for myself, midsummer, just fish fast. If they're there, they're going to eat. And, people talk about triggering a reaction, or maybe just warm enough where the fish react to you. I've seen it where you can fish with finesse in the summer and that water temperature is warm, and it's almost like the fish react to how you're fishing. If you're fishing real finesseful, you get these dainty little bites, and and you just pull your hair out. You kick it down and speed up, go heavier, go bigger, whatever, and all of a sudden it's just like wham! There ain't a doubt in your mind. There's a fish on, and so yeah, for me is fish fast in the summer or dog days.
Very good. All right, so we got some questions in regards to biggest fish, favorite fish. Jason, we're going to pick on you because obviously the audience can see the fish behind you. So can you explain what's on your wall? And then Obviously, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people probably realize what you let go last year could have been a potential state record. But talk about what fish you have mounted behind you, and then as well as like what is the most memorable fish you've caught.
Well, I think if you can see a walleye up in the corner, that was from Lake Winnipeg through the ice. And that was, I think, like 3 winters ago, back when we can still go to Canada. And then there's a pike behind me too. And I think, let's see, that pike came out of Canada too, up by way up in northern Canada, northern Manitoba, up by Thompson. But those are just some replicas. I haven't kept a fish in years. But when we built our new headquarters, we had a few fish replicas made of just some, just memorable fish that we had on television or whatever over the years. But yeah, and neat thing about it now is that there's so many big fish showing up. The state record was just broken in North Dakota here this spring, and goodness, we had the same record for, 50 years? I don't remember off the top of my head, but boy, there's a lot of nice fish getting caught around the country right now. It seems like it. Look at, that's one of the good things about social media is just following all these big fish getting caught. It's pretty cool.
Yep. Johnny?
Oh, biggest fish. I don't know. I've caught some sturgeon that were rather large. It's a pretty big channel catfish in the Red River, just north of Grand Forks. That's always a fun place to go. I think I cracked 30 pounds once there. Favorite fish, though, I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting older, or I'm tired of being cold, or a little bit of both. But I've been dabbling with some inshore saltwater stuff the last couple winters, and I don't know if there's a more fun fish on the planet to go after than a redfish in Venice, Louisiana. That's has become one of my favorite things to do. I start drooling about December 1st when I think about my trip down there in January every year. And they're big, they're strong, they eat pretty readily, and you fish for them with the same gear that I cast jigs with in Devil's Lake, North Dakota to catch a walleye. So it's a little bit of everything. And then they're phenomenal when you put them on the grill at the end of the day. So I would say my favorite fish the last couple years has been the redfish inshore. But man, I've like Jason when we first started this, right? The tug is the drug. Is that the saying, right? I really don't care what pulls back. I just fished a walleye tournament to try to earn some money for my living in the Detroit River. And every sheephead I caught was just as much fun until I saw it as every walleye I caught, right? They wiggled hard, they pulled hard, the rod bent over, got me excited. And yeah, there was a little disappointment when you see maybe not as desirable of a species come to the surface. But boy, for the 8 or 10 seconds I was reeling it in, I thought for sure I had the tournament won. So as long as that rod's bent, I'm usually pretty dang happy.
Very good. All right. So we are coming up. We got a couple more questions. Maybe we just randomly pick these. I'm just going to target one of you two guys, and we'll just 15 second questions. All right. So is a two-way rig a good method for walleye? Johnny?
A two-way rig?
Yep. I'm not sure if they're talking about using a three-way swivel or if they're talking about
yeah.
hooker.
If we're talking a three-way swivel, absolutely yes. Very versatile. Put a sinker on the bottom, plain hook, crankbait, spinner on top. And if you really want to get crazy, take the sinker off where it's legal to fish 2 lures at a time and put a lead head jig. You can fish it anywhere. Very, very effective.
Awesome. Jason, what do you do about boat traffic, aka jet skiers, water skiers?
Ignore it. I mean, it's there the whole time. I mean, I don't think it matters to the fish. I think when you have lakes where there's a lot of that type of traffic, the fish get used to it, and just act like it doesn't bother you. If you act like it bothers you, they're going to do it more. So you just ignore it and just pretend it don't exist. Keep on fishing.
Very good. All right, personal question. What do you guys do when you're not fishing?
Sleep.
Try to be a dad and a husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sure you have a place to sleep.
Pretty much.
All right, length of snell on bottom bouncers, Johnny.
Oh, if I'm running a spinner, 30 to 36 inches. No need to go longer. 30 to 36 gets it done day in and day out.
Very good. Jason, floral or braid?
Both. I like to use braid with maybe a 3 to 4 foot fluorocarbon leader, depending on the water.
Very good.
Times an Alberto knot.
All right, Johnny, a round jig or a flat eye jig?
Depends where I'm at. If I'm in a lake, round jig works just fine. If I'm in any kind of current, I like the flatter jigs. They cut the current better.
All right, Jason, what drives fish to go deep versus staying shallow?
Boy, it depends on the water. What drives me to go deep is if I can't catch them in shallow, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things. You can say it's the water temperatures, forage, whatever, but I mean, even on lake, I mean, even places like Fort Peck where you have fish on ciscos and stuff, I mean, you'll find fish up in the back bays in shallow water in the middle of summer. So look, they're going up there to warm up, you know, and so I look at it as a process of elimination. Sometimes I think people make up their mind too much, you know, and just, if they're not shallow, go deep. If you're deep and they're not deep, then go shallow. It doesn't matter what else is happening. So
very good. All right. Each one of you guys, I'd like to have you guys answer this question. Just two points, but someone going to a brand new body of water, what are the top 2 things they need to keep in mind? Johnny, we'll start with you.
You can't catch a fish that's not there. And we heard Jason say that before. If I'm going to a brand new body of water, I'm probably not going to drive out to the first point and drop a line down without doing some kind of investigating. I'm going to trust my electronics. Like Jason said, also, they're all good. I believe in my Humminbird graph. And if there's not a fish there, I'm probably not going to fish there because you can't catch one if it isn't underneath your boat.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and don't be afraid to try to get a feel for fishery, you know, either from forums, bait shops, whatever it is. I mean, I think anytime you go to a new fishery, don't be afraid to make a lot of phone calls. You know, do as much homework as you can. Look at, you know, even maps, Google imagery, whatever it is, just get a feel for stuff. So that way, when you start hearing things once you're there, you know, you can you kind of have an idea where that's at and kind of get a feel for how that fishery lays out and how it fishes. So.
Perfect. All right, last question, and either one of you guys can answer this one, but one of the guys who work with Brandon Stone and I experienced this. What do you guys do when you're fishing the mayfly hatch to get on a walleye? We were not successful. One fish, I think. Don't judge.
A little hornet behind leadcore or a small spinner with a half a crawler is my favorite presentations. Either really slow or really fast.
Yeah. I would say slow death, which falls right into the play of Jason's small spinner with a tiny piece of crawler, or the gaudiest, ugliest looking crankbait I own. I don't even want it to look natural. I want it to stand out from a crowd and get that walleye's attention.
Very good. All right. Well, we appreciate all the questions. We still have 7 pages. So we're going to do our best to make sure we bounce some of these questions off of Jason and Johnny here. And we got a bunch of experts as well in the Fargo store. And I mean, just even in this room, there's multiple people that are big time walleye fishermen. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt real quick. He's going to announce the prize winners and I'll wrap it up.
Absolutely. Right on this paper is the big prize winners for tonight. There was actually a lot of questions in the Q&A on when are you going to do the drawing? When are you going to do the drawing? So people are excited for this moment. So
drum roll.
Pretty sure we have that effect.
Do we? There we go.
There we go. Alrighty, so for the $500 SCHEELS gift card, we have Jared M. from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So,
all right, Jared.
Way to go, Jared. Good job.
Give you guys my address, too.
And then we have the $1,000 SCHEELS gift card winner, and that is Scott W. from McKinney, Texas.
Awesome.
Oh.
Congrats.
That's
job,
awesome,
Scott.
guys. Congratulations.
Yes, very good. All right, so we want to thank everybody, especially Jason and Johnny and the previous host or guests we've had this past week as well. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be rolling this off again. I'm not sure when the next series is going to be coming. Hopefully August, September timeframe, which I'm extremely excited for because that means we're on the verge of some bird hunting and some hunting season. And I can't wait for that. But please make sure you guys are checking out the sale going on right now. You can see it at scheels.com as well as going into your retail stores. We want to thank everybody. Good luck this fishing season.